On the line with us this morning, State Representative Jim Struzzi, who's caught in the middle of the grinder there in Harrisburg as they wind up the state budget hearings today in the House of Representatives. And our conversation with Representative Struzzi, presented to you by Marcus & Mack, voted best personal injury law firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Have you survived it there in Harrisburg?
Well, I'm still here, Todd. Yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks. Today's the last day of our House and Senate budget hearings for this upcoming 24-25 fiscal year budget. It's been an interesting process, I will say that.
You learn a lot, I'm sure, and maybe as much about the way that the governor's administration is thinking as you do about specific and very intentional types of things like from state system of higher education or health department or anything like that. You really get an idea of where Governor Shapiro is leaning, don't you?
Well, you do, and you begin to realize that the governor has a lot of ideas that are out there right now, but there's really, some of them don't have a lot of substance. And I appreciate the governor putting forth a lot of these ideas, but in the course of these 3 weeks of hearings, we've heard from a lot of different secretaries from the administration, and a lot of them, when you ask them to provide details on the plans, they don't have the details. And what they say is, well, this is the beginning of a discussion, which is fine. I think we do need to have discussions, particularly in the realm of higher ed, human services, education. But we're 3 months out from a budget deadline of June 30th, and it's time to start talking in realistic numbers. For example, the higher education blueprint that the governor has put out there really is simply 3 high-level ideas. And I've had the opportunity to ask the community colleges, I've asked PASHE, I've asked the state-related schools, and the Department of Education, and none of them could really provide any significant detail. And the confusing part for me, Todd, is the governor has put forth only a budget proposal that includes his new higher education blueprint without really any substantive numbers that really work towards the budget. And so that's just some of the confusion that we've experienced. But again, good ideas, but I think we need to separate the policy from the budget discussions right now.
Well, that's the big thing, and that's been the really big news in the last 6 weeks or so, is the governor has ideas about how higher education should look, and he's making proposals, but we all understand that it's going to take a while before those discussions narrow down and we get something solid and a policy that is actually placed. Meanwhile, you've got to fund it now.
Yeah, and that's absolutely it. Particularly with PASHE and the community colleges, they're talking a wholesale change, aligning them under one system. They're talking really a wholesale change in how we fund the state-related as well, moving from a 2/3 majority vote in the General Assembly to a grant program. And, this is March 7th, and, students are planning for the fall semester. They're, enrolling in colleges. And I think all of this uncertainty makes it challenging both for these administrators of these educational facilities and students and their families to try and plan. So that's sort of been, the message I've been sharing with these secretaries and the leaders of these schools is like, let's get down to business here and really start talking about what are the real numbers we need in this budget to ensure you have the funding you need coming into this fall semester.
Have there been other areas where it's particularly challenging during the budget discussions?
I think across the board, and I appreciate that the governor's trying some new ideas, trying to put things out there, but I think that there wasn't a lot of background work done on this. A lot of the secretaries have tried to answer the questions as best they can, but I think they were kind of shocked at some of this stuff too. And we're talking big numbers, Todd. It's a $48 billion budget proposal from the governor, $3.7 billion in new spending. That's a lot of money. And across the board with different agencies, everything from ag to labor and industry to the Department of Community and Economic Development to the DEP, they all have some new spending in there. And when you ask them to dig down into what does that spending mean, what are you going to do with that spending, they don't have a lot of answers, and that's concerning to me.
Education.
And I'm not saying that these plans aren't merited or even warranted in some cases, but we need those details.
Education is certainly one very big piece of the budget puzzle. There are many, many others. Transportation is one that has come up in recent days as well, and particularly the condition of bridges around our area. And Indiana County, in the southwest region, Indiana County is unfortunately at the very bottom of the list in the quality of the bridges, both state-owned and county-owned. We have more deficient bridges in our county than anybody else in the 10-county region. That's particularly distressing, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is, and I did bring that up with the Secretary of Transportation during their hearing earlier this week. They're proposing to shift a percentage of the sales and use tax to the transit trust fund, which is pretty significant. They're expecting that shift, which everyone pays the sales and use tax. They're expecting that shift, I think it's 1.7%, to generate $283 million that will be used for transit. And they're saying that money will be spread across the Commonwealth. But when you break down the numbers, the vast majority of that $283 million, almost $200 million of it, is going to go to SEPTA, the Southeast Transit Authority in the Philadelphia area, and the Port Authority, or PAT, in the Pittsburgh area. Not a whole lot's going to come to Indiana County. And, I praise the work that the folks at Indigo do. But, when we're talking about bridge deficiencies and road deficiencies, and we're channeling $283 million to two transit agencies, really a vast proportion of that, and we're only allocating $91 million for highway and bridge maintenance, I see a gap there. I think that we need to refocus, and especially when everyone pays sales and use tax. So it's not just coming from those urban areas, it's coming from the entire Commonwealth. What are we going to see in our area from that shift?
We have seen the effect of bridges going down in Pittsburgh in the last couple of years and in Philadelphia just last year, and how quickly it can turn around. But those are on an emergency basis. A regular maintenance program seems to be called for here.
Well, absolutely. There are things that need to be done to bridges and roads every year, particularly bridges with drainage, maintaining and inspecting on a regular basis and making sure that they're in sufficient shape to carry the load that they have to carry. And I know that the folks in District 10 and the folks at PennDOT do the best they can with what they have. But if there's not enough money to fix the problems, then you've got a bigger problem. And I think that when we're channeling proposing to channel $162 million to one transit agency in the southeast part of the state, I think we're missing something there. Not that, we don't need transit. I think the transit is essential for our economy and for building our future, but we have to maybe look at our priorities a little differently.
We're on the line with State Representative Jim Struzzi this morning, talking budget because that's what he's involved in. Today is the last day of those hearings. Where does the process go from here then?
Well, today we have the budget secretary, which I think is fitting to kind of tie everything together and maybe connect some of the dots from some of these agencies. And then we'll take a little time. We're back in session here on the 18th, and we'll regroup as a House Appropriations Committee, kind of look at what we learned, go back through the testimony, look at the questioning. There's a lot. I mean, these hearings go all day. And so we'll kind of assess where these secretaries really, said that they need the money. Is this new idea really going to make a difference? Are we going to make a difference in people's lives with this funding? And then look at ways that we can compromise because, the governor has put forth that $3.7 billion in additional spending. He wants to draw down some of our reserves, which, there are concerns with that as well. And then we'll try to find a landing place, I think, that meets the needs of Pennsylvania residents, that helps grow our economy, helps sustain our future without significantly causing any substantial fiscal impacts in the out years.
I want to take a really brief look because we don't have that much more time this morning, but at the immigration issue at our southern and even at our northern borders and how folks who have crossed illegally into our country are really flooding the streets of New York and Chicago. One would assume that they're eventually going to make their way here to western Pennsylvania. Maybe they've started to trickle in already. Does that concern you as a legislator in Harrisburg, that we have the resources should that happen here as it is in those places?
I think it's absolutely concerning, Todd, and I believe that came up during several of the hearings that we had, particularly with emergency services, with the state police. I think you're seeing an increase in drug trafficking. That is not anecdotal, and I think a lot of that's coming from the fact that we have open borders right now and the fact that so many people are coming in and who knows what they're bringing, and I think we cannot allow that to continue. We have to start holding this in check because it's going to have detrimental effects, not just in the immediate future but in the long-term future because we don't know who's coming in and we don't know what they're bringing. And, we're seeing more and more fentanyl-related deaths, fentanyl-related overdoses, and that should be a concern to everyone because it is going to affect every community in this country.
Last question for State Representative Jim Struzzi this morning has to do with the agreement yesterday between Armstrong, Punxsutawney, and Indiana Regional Medical Centers. Good deal for Indiana County and the region?
Oh, absolutely. I applaud Steve Wolf and his team at Indiana Regional Medical Center. I think they're doing great work. Yesterday, Todd, we had the Department of Human Services all day, and one of the big things that came up was the closing of rural hospitals. And I think people should appreciate just how blessed we are to have Indiana Regional Medical Center and the difference it's making not only for Indiana County but for our entire region, because other areas aren't seeing that right now. They're seeing hospitals close. They're seeing people have to make a trip 45 minutes just to get to a hospital for an emergency. And I did mention that to the apartment secretary yesterday, and they're well aware of it, but they don't have the solutions yet. So we're fortunate that IRMC has taken the initiative to really address our rural healthcare needs right now and into the future.
Absolutely. All right. State Representative Jim Struzzi, you're back in the area soon, I hope. See the family a little bit?
Absolutely, Todd. Today is the last day of these budget hearings, so we look forward to getting back into the district and getting out and meeting with people.
All right. Safe trip home.
Thank you, Todd. Have a great day.
State Representative Jim Struzzi with us this morning. It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com.